Wow, killing these guys is super easy, barely an inconvenience. Does it work on Terrorbeaks too? Nope. Hey there, my name is Soundrak and welcome to my Don't Starve Together video introducing its newest playable character, Wanda. Now, lots of other content creators have already covered all the basics for the character as well as showcased Wanda doing all sorts of crazy things, including downing all bosses in the game, farming nightmare fuel like a crazy lady, and even playing games with Charlie. But for all you non-veteran survivors out there, I thought I would make a beginner's guide to Wanda, sharing some tips and tricks to help you get started. As always, if you find this video helpful, informative, or at the very least somewhat entertaining, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below as it really helps promote the video with other viewers. Now with all that out of the way, let's get started. Whenever I cover a character in the Don't Starve universe, I always like to talk a little bit about the character's backstory. Unfortunately, with Wanda, we really don't know much of anything about her. She appears to already have her time-manipulating abilities in the real world, and seems perturbed but not surprised when shadow creatures keep chasing her. She's able to evade them for a time, but when using a hastily reconstructed clock, she accidentally rips a hole in the space-time continuum and gets pulled into the Constant. Her familiarity with shadow magic definitely aids her in the Constant though, where she's able to put it to good use as just another tool to be used for her advantage. Her voice is, quite fittingly, the chimes of a grandfather clock. Once you're in game with Wanda, you will quickly see that you start with a couple of items in your inventory and no health meter in your character stats area. Now I'm not going to go over all of the character specific items and details for Wanda as they've already been covered extensively in other guides. But there are a few key points that I want to emphasize as they are critical to surviving with this character. Wanda has a total lifespan of 60 years, and each small segment of her clock represents 5 years of age. The clock is divided into 3 major areas representing her age states, with 3 segments or 15 years for young age, 6 segments or 30 years for middle age, and again 3 segments or 15 years for old age. The 60 years in total equates to 150 health relative to other characters, and armor provides the same degree of damage reduction for Wanda's age as it does for other characters' health. At her absolute youngest, Wanda has 150 effective health. At the start of middle age with 45 years of life remaining, she has 112.5 effective health, and at the start of old age with only 15 years of life remaining, she has only 37.5 effective health. Wanda's age constantly ticks down at a rate of 1 year per 40 seconds or 12 years per day, meaning without any healing she will die of old age in 5 in-game days time. So it's a good thing she starts out with an ageless clock, which throughout the game is her only means of rewinding her age, or in other words, healing. The ageless clock can be used every 2 minutes to restore 8 years of lifespan, so a little less than 2 segments of her clock. Remember that because if you want to maximize her health in a given age range, you'll want to always use the ageless clock a little before her age reaches the second notch of that age range. Relative to her health, this is like healing 20 points, the same as a healing solve and half as much as a pierogi. Which brings us to the first major tip for new players rolling as Wanda, which is simply this. You should generally stay as young as possible, especially in the early game. The only benefit Wanda gets from being in either middle or old age states is increased damage with shadow weapons, including her unique weapon the Alarming Clock, and decreased or entirely negated sanity reducing effects from using magical items. And since you won't be using any such items right off the bat, there's no need to be anything than your youngest when first starting the game. Which brings me to my next tip, what to use those extra timepieces on before you're able to explore the ruins or atrium to make more. Now, you might be tempted to make a Backstep Watch, a Second Chance Watch, or additional ageless watches, but honestly I wouldn't bother with any of those. As long as you get some armor as soon as possible in the early game and either a log suit or football helmet are perfectly adequate, you should be just fine with a single ageless clock. And if for some reason you do need additional healing, you can always make another ageless clock and then deconstruct it to get all the ingredients back, which of course assumes you've already found the marble and red gems needed to make them. Pro tip, The best way to get red gems in the early game is to dig up graves. The second chance watch is only situationally useful depending on what caused you to die in the first place. For example, if you died surrounded by aggressive monsters, then chances are returning to the scene of your demise may just cause history to repeat itself. So in general, you're probably better off using a touchstone or, once you've gotten your magic stations up and running, a life-giving amulet or meat effigy. And if you're playing with others, you can simply use a telltale heart as, having no health, Wanda will suffer no maximum health penalty from using such items. As for the Backstep Watch, I'm honestly not a big fan of the thing. Although yes, it can be used very effectively against certain bosses, including the Dragonfly and Shadow Pieces. If you're just a regular gamer, you probably won't be rushing straight to them. And outside of such fights, you're probably better off pursuing combat with standard familiar kiting methods, rather than trying to get the timing and positioning just right with the Backstep Watch. Not to mention that if you accidentally use it in the wrong place or at the wrong time, it will get you killed in a hurry. Instead, a better combat-related option for your initial timepieces is to make my recommended watch the Alarming Clock. It requires a Shadow Manipulator, 4 marble, and 8 Nightmare fuel to craft, but once made, this character-exclusive weapon is amazing for combat. At young age, Wanda deals 81.6 damage per hit, just over 13 more than a dark sword or glass cutter, and with its added range, kiting and killing regular mobs will be super easy. Tree guards are a piece of cake with this thing. It will smack crawling horrors before they can even attack, meaning you don't even have to kite them, and even in young age, it will kill all hounds in just 2 hits. Once you've gotten the Alarming Clock, it's a good idea to start hanging out in middle age, as the clock's damage goes up to about 98 damage per hit, and if you're a confident combatant, Granny Wanda will do a massive 142.8 damage per swing, which gives new meaning to the old adage, the best defense is a good offense. That said, old lady Wanda really is a glass cannon, and big hitters will kill her quite dead in just a few hits, even if she has armor on. So if you aren't prepared to take such risks, just play it safe and hang out on the young end of middle age or even at her youngest, and your damage output, along with effective health and increased weapon range, will keep you pretty safe in most fights. As for getting started with Wanda in a new DST world, she mostly plays just like any other character. You'll want to start the game exploring the edges of the map while gathering critical survival materials and looking for gold. Once you've found a decent amount of gold, you'll want to craft basic weapons, armor, tools, and pre-craft an alchemy engine. If you found the Mosaic Biome's graveyard, you can always dig up graves for a chance at getting red gems, and statues can be hammered for marble if you want to make more ageless watches. There's no need to make the clockmaker's tools early on though, as they won't be needed unless you want to disassemble a watch and will otherwise just take up inventory space. While you're exploring, it can be a good idea to open up any sinkholes you come across and quickly explore the surrounding areas down in the caves. You'll be hoping to find the Blue Mush Tree Forest biome, as the Lunar Grotto naturally spawns next to it and leads to the Ancient Archive, your easiest source of early game Thulecite fragments for making more watches. So long as you just run through, these areas are pretty safe, though you may want to hold off until you've crafted some better lighting options, such as a lantern or miner's hat. But once in the archive, there will be plenty of archival Thulecite walls you can hammer down for 2 fragments each, meaning this one mob-free area could provide all your watchmaking material needs for quite some time. Now once you've finished exploring the surface map, go ahead and pick a spot and start building a base. My top picks for early game base structures are the following: a fire pit, a lightning rod, 1 to 3 storage chests, 2 to 4 crock pots, at least 1 ice box, a bird cage, and a couple of drying racks, and of course your pre-crafted alchemy engine. Around this time you'll probably have your first hound attack, and I recommend simply fighting them with whatever weapon and armor you have on hand. These first few hounds can be kited pretty easily, and if needed they can just be tanked with minimal damage. Trapping a few rabbits to get a prestidigitator up and running is a good idea while you otherwise work on fleshing out your base. And stay on the lookout for lots of green and blue mushrooms, as you'll want to start farming shadow creatures for nightmare fuel as soon as you can. It'll take 7 fuel to make the shadow manipulator, and hopefully you've found some clockwork bishops by now for the purple gem. But keep fighting those shadow creatures, as you'll need 8 additional fuel to make your alarming clock, as well as more to refuel it. 20 fuel should be a pretty good start. As for living logs, your best bet is to chop down a totally normal tree unless you get some early tree guards. Using pig lumberjacks is generally a good way to get the tree guards to show up. All things considered, if you can get your alarming clock before the end of your first fall or during winter before Deerclops shows up, you'll be off to a great start. As for winter, you'll definitely want to make farming the walrus hunting parties a priority, as you'll need walrus tusks not only for a walking cane, but also for any backtrek watches you want to make in the future. Go in with either pig friends or use other mobs or even Chester as bait for the hunters, then rush in and take out the fiends. They respawn about every 3 days, so keep track of the time they were last killed and hunt them as often as needed to get at least a couple of tusks and maybe even a tam o'shanter. Around day 30, you'll be visited by Deerclops, and hopefully by now you've got your alarming clock ready to go. If you're comfortable kiting, Deerclops can be taken out really fast by Granny Wanda, but if you want to play it safe, just stay middle-aged and the fight will be over before you know it. And if you aren't good at kiting, start the fight at the beginning of middle age, stand on a blazing campfire, and have a fresh football helmet or log suit, and you'll down the clops by simply holding F until the giant is dead. It'll make you crazy quite quickly though, so best to start the fight with high sanity to reduce the chance of shadow creature interference. And that's basically all you need to do to get off to a great start with Wanda. As for the other giants, they can similarly be fought with the standard kiting strategy. No need to use the Backstep Watch, as the timing and positioning with it can be quite finicky. Because of the extra range of the whip-like alarming clock, you can generally get in 3 hits between dodges against Deerclops, MooseGoose, and Bearger, especially if you're on a road or are toggling with the walking cane. As for Antlion, the summer boss can easily be tanked with a fresh marble suit, and you don't even need the desert goggles. Though if the Antlion is very far into the sandstorm, you'll probably want them. As for the rest of the bosses and events, yes, Wanda can handle them all with style. There are a few other content creators that have already showcased most if not all of these fights, but check the links down in the description if you want to see footage of Wanda taking out these challenges. But that's it for this quick introduction to Wanda. So far I've had a lot of fun playing as her, and her unique mechanics make her a great option for beginners as well as veterans, playing solo as well as supporting a group. Thanks for watching, and now get out there and don't starve!